can it last? Every day there is $90 million over and above what it costs, just to be there. And it's a country running a big deficit with very big problems over savings and loans, S&L, and all kinds of difficulties. But it's undertaken to do a world job. Pax Britannica lasted over 120 years. The British Navy, of course, in the days of the steamship and the sailing ship. So technological change slower. They maintain the freedom of the seas, international trade for over 120 years until World War II. After that, the Americans took over. So the Americans have done it for 45 years. Can they do it for another 45? I have reservations. Not that they lack the will, the resources. Can they do it for another 20? In other words, give time for the UN or some organization to take over. 20, I asked some American leaders, including the top military men, they said, well, possible 10 years. They're confident because they got the resources for, they got all the capital equipment. They can carry on for another 10, maybe 15 years. But 20 years, next generation of weapons, that's a big expenditure. In other words, the future is going to be a very problematical one without some Pax UN or Pax Americana amended -Japan -EC Soviet Union maybe, or the Russian Republic. Some such Pax must be established, or you will have international lawlessness. As the Chinese saying goes, 大鱼吃小鱼，小鱼吃虾米. Big fish eat small fish eat shrimps. So we say, well, we become tadpoles. That is really the crux of life for Singapore. So when I met Lee Peng, the Premier Lee Peng, yes, he has problems, enormous problems, 1,100 million of them. But there can be a conflagration in the Gulf. It's not going to affect the standard of living of China. They just carry on. They grow their own rice. They have their own oil. Maybe investments will slow down. Markets may be more difficult in America. But for us, an immediate lowering of all economic activity, because we are geared in. Their external trade, a miserable small 6-7% of their total GDP. Ours is 320% of our GDP. So you see, our vested interests, and indeed the vested interests of all the countries in the world with links with other nations, trade, investments, we require a peaceful, stable environment. Who will play policeman? And for how long? I cannot answer that question. I know it's not going to come in my watch. As far as I know, I'm leaving my watch with Singapore in a relatively stable international situation. if it is going to go wrong, it will not be Goh Chok Tong's fault. It will just be because the international situation has changed. And this is a fact which they recognize, and I'm hoping Singaporeans will recognize. So you may well have, as Singaporeans, faced with certain developments which the government may find difficult to explain publicly, to take more measures to make sure that on our own we still can do something for ourselves. It is in the nature of our geography, our demography, and the strategic situation we are in. Not our choice. Given a choice, we wanted to be part of a larger whole called Malaysia. It was not to be. This is what we have. We make it work. And I think if we got that will, we will make it work. Those who are faint-hearted, well, there's the exit for you. It will always be an open country. You can move in, you can move out. There is no other way in which we can live. What made the difference in Singapore was that a group of men in 1963, 64, 65, when we were in Malaysia, we decided that we are going to live only one life. We must die. If we have to die, we will die for a cause worthy of our lives. That made Singapore possible. We couldn't be placated and settle for less. To settle personally for a way out for yourself was easy. And generous exits, golden parachutes, golden handshakes were in abundance. But that broke a trust we had. That made Singapore possible. I believe we've got a group of men similarly determined. I'm not sure whether in a crisis they got the same tempered steel, but I think quite a few will measure up. The question is to get more. And each generation, each election, you must find 10, 15, 20 good candidates, and amongst them 2, 3 potential good ministers. You need a population that understands that. Then it will work. If you believe you're going to get good government, whatever you do, then you're going to risk it all away. You take chances. You vote in jokers, cranks, weak men, worse, charlatans, plausible men. With some gift of the gab, you run a very serious risk of losing everything you have. So the final message I give to Singaporeans is, your future really depends on what you make of it. The government can give you that framework, can give expression to the will of a people, but the people must have that will. If you don't have it, there's nothing a government can do. I always think of Sihanouk when I think of a people. Even in the wilderness, all he had was a handful of men. So who has he got on the border? His son, Prince Ranarit, and a few others. Way back in Cambodia, before all this unhappiness took place in 1970 in the coup, a smattering of not very good performers. One of them, Son San, one of the better men. No people can afford not to have strong men at the top, especially young countries, vulnerable countries. You keep your strong men in your big corporations, let's say your banks or your TAS or SIA. Can they survive if the country is shaken? You need Singapore first. Then on that you can mount all your other operations. I'll just wind up in a few words of Chinese.
Let me summarize.
我们的命运
Our fate
是新加坡人民自己来决定的。
is determined by the people of Singapore ourselves.
人民有没有那个意志？
Whether our people have the
国家
will,
这样小，
our country is so
人口这样。
small.
不值得说是一个国家的260
We have a population
万，
of 2.6 million.
很难维持哈。
It's difficult to maintain
可是过去的
a nation.
25年里，
But in the last 25 years, we have
有志
proved
者
that if we have the will, we would succeed.
不管将来的新加坡是面对什么难题，
Regardless of the future problems of Singapore,
如果我们能够
if we
团结一
can
致
work together, united,
能够有理智的选择一个
and make a rational
廉
decision
洁、
for
效
an
率的、有
honest
能干
and
的政府，
effective and competent
我
government,
们会有我们的办法。
we would be able to find our solution.
国破家亡，
If the country falls,
这个是
the families will be destroyed.
大家要常常记住的。
That is something that we must always remember.
为了国家的生存，
For the sake of the survival of our country,
25年后的新加坡是怎样的新加坡？
what kind of
很难
Singapore will
预
be
测的
in 25 years will be
因为我
difficult
们
to
没有办
imagine,
法预测
because
25年
it
后
is
的
not
世界是
possible
怎样的世界，
for us
是
to
不是有
predict with any degree of
和平
certainty
共处的一个
what
世
kind
界
of world it will be in
或者
25 years, whether it will be a peaceful world
强国
or a world
压小国的一个国
where
家。
the bigger countries or more powerful nations suppress the weaker ones.
所以这个波斯湾的危机是
And therefore, the Gulf
Sudan.
crisis
重要的，决定
is an important event
将来的世界是
which will
怎么
determine
样的一个世界。
the kind of world that we're going to get in the future.
我希望这个
I hope
危机
that the crisis
解决的办法是维持
will be resolved
世界的
in this way,
安全、
that the world
安宁，
will be peaceful,
国际的法律一定
that
要
international law and order will be
每一个
maintained
国家、每一个政府
and respected
遵守的，
by every country of the
不
world.
能够以为
We cannot
我有化学武器，
allow
所以
any country to get away with the idea
能
that
够蹲下去
if。I possess
我的小弟
chemical weapons, I shall be able to
这个
devour
不是
a smaller
发财
country.
致富的一个好办法。
This is not the
如果
way
你让一个
to
国家这样
prosperity.
发财，
If we allow a
那一
country
连串
to succeed in this course of
爆发的
action,
用武力的，美国跟
there will be the end
西方国家
of the world.
从1945年
Since
对
1945,
抗共产国家，
US and other countries have countered communism.
阻止他们用武力
They have prevented
霸占其他的有财富的国家，
communist countries
才有今天的这样
from
的事。
taking others by force. And this is why we have the world
所以
today.
希望
And
新加
therefore,
坡
it is my hope
要
The
新加坡
Singapore
人一定要常常记住的。
and the people of Singapore will always remember this.
我们虽然小，
Although we are small,
可是也有我们的办法。
we have
麻
our
雀
means.
虽小，五脏俱全。
Although the sparrow is small,
只有要一
it
个
has
志，
all its organs.
那希望
As long as we have the will, we will succeed.
将来的新加坡人
We hope that the future Singaporeans
和过去的是一样的，有那
will
样的
be as determined as the Singaporeans of the past.
自尊心，敢做。
They will have self-respect
那谢谢
and the courage
大家。
to succeed. Thank you and good night.